Chapter 9. Journey Through the Dark. Emma would not stop budging. As they put more and more distance between them and the dragons, Emma still continued to bang her fists against Jacob's shoulders and was still sobbing 10 minutes later. Jack couldn't help but feel extremely sorry for her. Even if she really did have no friends in Fronston, they were still the people she knew and must have cared for in some way. He wanted to comfort Emma in any way possible, but he honestly had no idea how. Jack had never experienced someone mourning of this degree before, but he thought there are bound to be more encounters like dragons and such, so maybe he should get used to the idea of mourning and sadness. "Hey, it's all right," said Jacob quietly. "What you did was actually incredible. The way you got onto that dragon and literally killed it. Without you, we wouldn't be standing here." "Yeah, Jacob's right," said Jack, determined to be responsible for the one who made Emma smile again. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Emma sniffled slightly and stopped squirming in Jacob's arms. "Yeah, I suppose so. I just hope that the others are okay, and if they were attacked again..." Emma stopped speaking and wiped her nose on her sleeve. "Where's my sword?" she asked, looking around. "It's here," said Jack, lifting it to show her. The sword was now coated in thick red substance which was dripping onto the grass behind them, leaving a trail. "We should probably wipe it clean. I'd hate for someone to see it and for them to start following us, even more so if it's someone who's out to get us." "Yeah, good idea," said Jacob, and he opened his backpack and pulled out a rather old-looking rag. He spat into it and began wiping down the sword, clearing it of all the blood. "Before you finish it off," said Jack, having a thought, "can dragon blood be used for anything? Like, can it cure wounds or anything?" Jacob and Emma stared at Jack, but soon their faces turned into puzzled looks. "I don't think so," said Jacob, dipping his finger in the blood. "I mean, I know people who use it as a food ingredient." "Really?" asked Emma, sounding shocked. "Yeah, they say you only need like 1 drop of it to change the flavor entirely. Too much of it and you're basically eating fire. It's so hot." "I'll believe that," said Jack. "Do we want to keep some for our next meals? If it's rare to come by, I think we should store some. Even if we never use it, we can give it to your mum, Jacob, when we get back." "Yeah, we might run into trouble, and maybe we could use it to bargain with our captors," said Emma. "Not what I was thinking, but yeah, sure," said Jacob. "I've got a tiny pot we can put the rest in." With rummaging through his bag for the smallest pot, he pulled out several items before locating it: matches, candles, blankets, until finally the small flask emerged. He pointed the tip of the sword into the flask pot, and what was left of the blood began to fill the pot. Moments later, he was squeezing everything he had taken out of his bag back into it. "Okay, great," he said, handing the sword back to Emma. All three of them were smiling at one another until suddenly they heard a distant rumble from the north. "Thunder," said Emma, staring at the sky. "We should move fast before it makes its way over here. Maybe with some luck we can find another forest or a cave to hide in until it stops." "What about the tent?" asked Jack. "Can't we take shelter in that?" "We can," said Jacob, "but it's not waterproof. 10 minutes of downpour and it'll be saturated." "Oh, I see," said Jack, he too gazing at the oncoming thunderclouds. "Let's get going," said Emma, sliding her sword back into hidden eyes. "It sucks that the only way for us to go is directly into the storm," said Jacob. "Yeah, well, like I said, maybe we can find somewhere to stay dry," said Emma, not looking back as she started moving forward. Taking advantage of the silence again, Jack thought hard about what he and the others had just been through. They had just encountered 3 live dragons. How could he have never known that beyond the forest and the hills lay 3 fire-breathing creatures? Had he just been stupid and not noticed them fly over Wrangleton before? Or could it be that the beasts simply did not venture that way? Were they happy with attacking Fronston every so often and then residing back into their past? And even if they were, why did they never branch out and try other places? Jack thought it was strange that the dragons never came that way once, not while he had been there at any rate. Did his father not know either? Even if he didn't know, did Mrs. Thorland know? Obviously they must know that dragons are real. The Battle of Silverville was proof of that. He wondered what else was out there in the world. What else could be hiding behind the hills and the mountains? If dragons were able to keep themselves concealed for so long, who knows what else might be capable of the same thing? The thought terrified him. He thought back to what the others had said about Silverville. Wolves and trolls took part in that battle. The only trolls Jack had ever heard of was the small ones that lived under bridges. He could not see how they would be much help in a fight like that. Unless there were thousands of them, maybe. As the sky darkened and the wind became more powerful and strong, Jack, Jacob, and Emma began walking as fast as they could in some hope that a patch of trees or something would sort of emerge. Lightning began to strike the sky and rain fell down hard. "Wonderful," shouted Jacob. "Feels like I'm back in the river again." "Never mind the rain," shouted Emma. "It's the lightning I'm worried about." "If we don't get out of here soon," yelled Jack, "we're going to get hit. Also, they say during lightning storms you shouldn't hide under trees." "Great!" shouted Jacob sarcastically. "Keep running up the path," Jack screamed. "With any luck it will stop, or we might find somewhere." Nodding all together, they took off in a run and tried to keep an eye out for approaching forests or villages. The path they were following started to go up a steep hill, which brought them closer to the sky, as well as the storm itself. Slipping every few feet, Jack, Emma, and Jacob made it to the top, but did not stop to take in the view. Grey clouds covered the sky as far as the horizon could go, but just as it all looked like they'd be swimming soon, Jack noticed a rather small opening at the bottom of the hill, and slightly to the left. "Look!" he yelled and pointed at the cave. Jacob gave a thumbs up to show he understood and slid down the hill and darted into the cave. Jack and Emma were more cautious about going down the hill, and before he knew it, Jack lost his footing, fell onto his back, and dragged Emma down through the wet grass to the bottom of the hill. Laughing slightly to herself, she got off the earth and yanked Jack into the dark cave. "Sorry about that," said Jack, shivering slightly. "Don't know what happened," Emma laughed. "Don't worry about it. Kind of exciting in a way." "Glad you two are having fun," said Jacob, shivering vigorously. "Let's get another fire going." "That might be easier said than done," said Jack, as quietly pulled out the damp matches from his pocket. "Lucky for you, I brought some and hid them wrapped up in blankets." Jacob sounded so proud from what Jack could see. He was smiling. "Is there wood in here?" Jack asked. "It looks more like there's stone everywhere instead of wood." "He's got a point," said Emma, smiling, and obviously found the whole scenario amusing. "Why do you always laugh at things like this?" asked Jacob, agitated. "Oh, I just find the whole thing funny. Us here, soaked to the skin in some dark stone cave. It's pretty funny." Jacob kept a straight face as he began feeling around for anything that might burn. Jack couldn't help but crack a smile as he too started searching. Emma, on the other hand, sat down where she stood, took the blankets out of Jacob's bag, and threw one at each of the boys while she wrapped herself in another one. "This is probably the best we've got right now," said Emma, looking up at her friends and grinning. Looking at the blankets as though they were infested with something horrible, Jacob hesitated before reluctantly taking his wrapping over his shoulders, while Jack took his blanket off the cold stone and he too wrapped it around himself. All three of them sat in silence as they watched the rain pour down on the outside of the cave and heard the occasional thunderclap with a flash of white lightning. In a very strange way, Jack found the storm soothing. Whenever he was trying to sleep in Wrangleton, he always found it much easier when it was raining outside. The sound of the raindrops on his home rooftop would calm him and help him think and imagine better. Making the most of the silence and the beating rain, Jack started to think again about what had just happened. He could not shake the realization that he and his two companions were battling dragons. Jack also remembered the thought that he had about other creatures and beasts what must reside in the world. Looking around at the dark and damp cave, he suddenly felt extremely uneasy. Not knowing what else must be hiding in the dark was worse than knowing. He hated it when his thoughts ran ahead of him like this. Trying to distract himself from his ideas, he spoke and broke the silence. "What was that, though?" he asked the group, who were still transfixed on the storm outside. "What do you mean?" asked Emma, turning away from the rain. "The dragons," said Jack quietly. "They were actual live dragons. How long have they been around here?" "Those ones in particular have been around for years," said Emma as she turned her body away from the outside. "Dragons in general have been around for thousands of years. Surely you've heard songs and tales of the great fire creatures that are indeed dragons." Jack's eyebrows raised slightly as he began to speak. "Yes, of course I have, but I didn't actually think they would be near me. Things in tales and songs, I always took them to be things of dreams and of faraway places, not on the other side of the forest closest to me." Emma chuckled slightly. "Well, Jack, I'm sorry to break this to you, but yes, dragons are real, and they are not so mystical and fairy tale-like as the stories say. They're violent, vicious creatures who do nothing but destruction." "They can't all be like that, though, can they?" asked Jack, sounding confused. Emma and Jacob both laughed. When have you ever heard of a friendly dragon? Asked Jacob, smiling. Okay, well, I haven't, but that doesn't mean that they're all violent like that, surely. Yeah, okay, Jack, said Emma, smiling too. If we ever come across a dragon who doesn't try to burn us as soon as he sees us, then I promise I'll take back everything I've ever said about them. Yeah, Jack, me too, said Jacob, still smiling. Not feeling very reassured, Jack knew he would not win this argument, so he nodded. Anyway, said Emma loudly, I'm glad you've seen the dragons now. You have a small indication as to what's out there, and in this world, and what we have to go through in order to find our prize. That's if we ever get to our prize, said Jacob glumly. Emma sighed. Was that your first time seeing dragons too, Jacob? She asked. Up close like that, yes. But I knew they existed and the damage they can do, but it was still a bit of a shock to see it in person like that. Well, it seems like it's a good lesson for the both of you, she said sharply. Yes, we've seen dragons, but we defeated them as well. Remember that? You defeated one of them, said Jack, not we. Which was pretty amazing, I thought, said Jacob. Oh, don't be like that now. We're all together, so we all did it. She stood up and began gazing around the cave like Jack was earlier, as though looking for something. Jack couldn't lie to himself and say that it didn't feel good to be praised like that, even though he didn't feel like much of a dragon defeater. But as usual, the image of him standing with a sword and being the hero who saved everyone came creeping back into his mind, and it was extremely comforting. Sounding a lot braver than he felt at the current moment, he spoke loudly. Right, so what's our next move? Do we wait for the rain to calm down so we can carry on, or do we go cave exploring? The other two took this question very seriously and started talking about which option was best. Emma began the conversation. If we wait for the storm to stop, who knows how long we'll be in here? But then again, if we venture down the cave, who knows where we might end up? What two do you think? Yeah, like you say, Jacob started, we could be waiting for hours for the rain to stop, even calm down slightly, but I don't know how I feel about the cave. We could get lost or stuck down there for days or weeks. Okay, well, I'd rather be in the dark than wet, said Emma, and from looking around from what I can see, if some kind of animal or anything were to be living in here, we would have heard them by now. Also, there's no bones or nests that I can see to show anything is in here. As horrible as it seems, I'd rather be in the dark than wet too, said Jacob. Me too, said Jack simply, not to be singled out. Right, well that's something. So far, it's looking like the cave is the way to go. Cool, said Jacob. I guess it's into the black hole we go. What did you say? Asked Jack, staring at Jacob like he had just discovered fire. I said into the black hole we go, said Jacob without looking. Looking baffled as Emma gave him a huge slap and started rummaging through her backpack for something. What are you doing? Into the black hole, said Jack, putting a strong emphasis on the last two words. Black hole, Jacob, the sword, he shouted, so it echoed in the cave. Jacob's mouth fell open. Of course, he shouted. This could be it. Emma, what do you think? Minutes of intense silence passed as Emma scanned the book looking for a certain page with a bit of map saying black hole on it. I found it, she yelled excitedly. But according to this, and remembering what you said back at your house, it's on the other side of the Remarkables, and near Aldorgelu, which I know we are miles from, so just maybe this cave isn't the one. But that doesn't mean that there's no magic at all was used in this cave, exclaimed Jacob. We should go and have a look around, see if there's any clues or anything leading to Eurythemus. Jack thought it was a long shot, but he did not want to dampen Jacob's sudden desire to move on. Emma, too, looked cautious at the sudden plan, but smiled nonetheless. If you're sure, Jacob, then we'll do it, she said. Yes, golden swords, here we come, he shouted as he helped Jack and Emma to their feet and then began rushing into the cave. Jack and Emma looked at each other, both looking slightly unsure about something, but followed Jacob into the dark. It quickly became obvious that this might not have been their smartest decision. They had luckily managed to find some small pieces of wood laying around and were able to light them on fire for a better view of what was in front of them, but the cave was incredibly eerie. It was dead quiet inside apart from the sound of their footsteps kicking small rocks, and what did not help them was that the cave was very unpredictable with the way its path was made. It had began as flat, smooth surface, but rapidly became steep, going down with jagged rocks coming not from the ground, but from the walls too. Amazingly, Jacob was still leading the group and held a brave, confident tone in his voice. You two doing okay back there? He asked, overlooking over his shoulder. Yes, we're all right, thank you, said Emma through great heavy breaths. Can you see anything up ahead? A sign of anything of any sort that isn't black? Sadly, no, he said loudly. I guess that's why they call it the black hole, right? Jacob started laughing quietly to himself. After several minutes of steep descending, the earth levelled out again and became flat. But there were still sharp rocks to watch out for. Turning his head as they carried on, Jack looked back up the steep slope. There's no way we're getting back up there, are we? The other two stopped and looked up. Yeah, I don't fancy climbing up that, said Jacob. It's all right. We'll find our way out, and if we find some magic or something, it will be all worth it. He carried on walking ahead. We won't find any magic down here, said Emma quietly, so only Jack could hear. Remember when we were around the unicorns? Remember what kind of feeling they gave off? Yes, I do, said Jack in a hushed voice. It felt as though nothing could hurt you while they were around. Exactly. Do you feel that here? No, but you can't expect unicorns to be down here. I'm not talking about unicorns, I'm talking about magic itself. It leaves traces and feelings, and sometimes if it's strong enough, you can see where it's been. I'm telling you, Jack, if there had ever been some kind of magic down here, we'd know. Not answering her, Jack looked at the ground and kept walking. He had to stare at the ground as to not trip over any of the rocks. He started thinking about what Emma had just said. Magic leaves traces and you can feel when it's near. How did she know this? Could anyone feel magic around them? Or did you have to be some sort of mystical being to feel it? There were a lot of unanswered questions about Emma that Jack had no answers for. He hoped there would be an appropriate time to ask them, or whether or not they might come out in themselves in due course.